Welcome to Let's Talk Red Hill, your source for the latest updates and insights on the Navy's progress at the Red Hill Bulk Fuel Storage Facility. This podcast is dedicated to keeping you informed, addressing your concerns, and sharing progress straight from the experts leading the way.
Aloha, I'm Commander Ben Dunn. I'm the Deputy for Environment and Remediation at the Navy Closure Task Force for Red Hill. I've overseen the Navy's drinking water monitoring efforts, well recovery, and environmental activities at Red Hill. Today, with me is Mr. Chris Waldron. He's a environmental engineer and president of Pioneer Corporation, who has been intimately involved in the Navy's efforts to recover the Joint Base Drinking Water System since late 2021 in response to the Red Hill incident. Chris, if you wouldn't mind giving an overview of what transpired over the last 4 or 5 years as the Navy has worked through responding to the November 21 release that impacted the drinking water, and then the steps we've taken to demonstrate a full recovery of the system.
Yeah, you bet. Aloha. Good to be with you today. You know, as part of the response to the release from Red Hill in November of 2021, there are really kind of 5 major elements of the response. We had the emergency response, we had the integrated drinking water system team, which is another phase. We had what was called the flushing phase, and then we went into what we called long-term monitoring and extended drinking water monitoring. So just to try to take, 4 or 5 years and try to kind of break it up into component parts. And so starting with the emergency response phase, that kicked in right after the release occurred. And in that phase was really trying to put together all the logistics of trying to get hundreds of people to the island, experts, to be able to respond as quickly and as efficiently as possible, standing up medical to make sure that we had the right medical information in place with medical providers for folks that might have questions and concerns, sampling and so forth. So really the first period right after the release was securing Red Hill so that it was no longer a source, and the logistics of trying to get everything in place to get people back into their homes and with safe drinking water as quickly as possible.
Okay, so following the emergency response, we had the interagency drinking water system team. And who was involved in that, and what did that drive?
Yeah, the interagency drinking water systems team was a combination of efforts from Environmental Protection Agency, the Department of Health, the Navy, the Army, FEMA, other representatives within the government, as well as contractors and other organizations. And the point and the goal of the interagency systems drinking water team was to, as efficiently as possible, restore safe drinking water to the users on Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam, but to do that in a safe and effective manner. And so the team developed sampling plans, evaluated data, developed flushing plans, and essentially what the purpose was is to amend the Department of Health's health advisory for the system so that folks would have safe drinking water that they could use within their homes.
Okay. Yeah, and what followed the interagency drinking water system team operations was the flushing and recovery. We then entered quite an extensive extended drinking water monitoring program, the long-term monitoring program.
Yeah.
And that served to validate that the water did remain safe.
Yeah, exactly. Since as part of the interagency drinking water system team, we flushed the system, and then we collected what we call confirmation samples. So we sampled afterwards to make sure that we'd actually achieved our objective of cleaning the system and making sure there was no residual petroleum hydrocarbons or jet fuel in the system. And then after that, we didn't just stop. I mean, that wasn't the end. We had achieved that objective, but then what we did was we moved on to long-term monitoring, as you mentioned, which was really just to confirm and restore consumer confidence. So for 2 years, we collected upwards of 6,000 plus, actually it was higher than that. It was almost 9,000 samples as part of that effort to confirm that, the drinking water was safe. And in fact, that's what the results of the long-term monitoring program showed.
Okay, yeah. And however, that was not the end. We then moved into another year of enhanced drinking water monitoring, which we actually completed last year. But to give the details of what was the difference between that and the prior program.
Yeah, it was a continuation of that. We had more of we kind of at each step within the process, we kind of got more focused on what we were testing for in terms of fuels. In talking with EPA and DOH, we agreed to extend it for another year and continue to sample throughout the distribution system. We sampled Wyava Shaft, which was the source of all drinking water on the system at that time. And then we had continued extensive sampling in schools, CDCs, medical facilities, et cetera, as part of that effort. That went on for a year, as you said, and we just ended that at the end of March of last year. And we finished up the year of sampling there. And again, the results of that were consistent with what we had seen previously under long-term monitoring, and that was that there was no indication of fuel or any other contaminants within the system.
Great. And so now we're at the point of returning to normal with respects to drinking water compliance monitoring. We've done the routine Safe Drinking Water Act compliance monitoring all along. Certainly we'll be continuing that. But we're now at the point of transitioning back to just that. But along the way, we've had DOH and EPA involved, and they've also done sampling and investigation of the system parallel to what the Navy was doing. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, the Navy has collected over 17,000 samples as part of the efforts to evaluate the system. We've sampled upwards of 95% of the homes and buildings on the system. Ultimately, our goal was 100%, but there's a few buildings that we couldn't get access to, or people maybe didn't want us to sample, so we didn't force sampling, but our goal was obviously to get every structure. In addition to that, EPA and DOH performed independent evaluations where they had their own samples, their own laboratories, their own testing, and evaluated the results totally independent of all the stuff that the Navy has done. And their results are consistent with ours, in that they didn't find any indication of fuel or JP5 or any hydrocarbons or other contaminants in the system, which was consistent with what we had found in all of the efforts that we had done in those 17,000 plus samples.
Oh, well, great. I appreciate you walking through that. There's been, it's been over 4 years since the release and the initial response and recovery efforts that the Navy's taken, and a lot has transpired in a very extensive effort. So great to be able to walk through the big milestones and the chapters of that time for the Navy. And for those that are interested in learning some more, we have a lot of information. All of the data collected during that time, that is all available on the Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam Safe Waters website. The drinking water page has many resources, as well as all of that data and reports again. So just want to thank you, Chris, for joining us, and appreciate the support along the way, and look forward to continuing to communicate in the public. Thanks.
Mahalo for listening to Let's Talk Red Hill. Stay tuned for our next episode, and be sure to subscribe to stay up to date. Be sure to download the mobile app by searching NCTF Red Hill in the Apple Store or Google Play.